This is a summary of the 4th season of the Debbie and Carrie Show. Debbie was always extremely attached to her mother, and Sandy's premature death broke Debbie's heart forever. Then when Debbie reached old age in the 2050s, a method of time travel was invented, so Debbie took advantage of that to travel back to the year 2021 to change history, giving Sandy a vaccine to prevent her from coming down with multiple sclerosis and warning her not to commit suicide, ever. This started a new timeline in which Sandy would be able to make a huge difference. In the new timeline, Bella and Eric Sterling had gotten married right out of high school, and Bella was now head waitress at the Tuscany Tavern, while Eric worked as an auto mechanic. Whitney Owen now came to the Tuscany Tavern to look for a job, but the restaurant was fully staffed. So Sandy offered Whitney a place working for her at her law firm. Dave Owen, Whitney's grandfather, was about to be released from prison, so Sandy and Whitney went to confront him regarding his misdeeds. When Whitney told him to his face that her loss of faith in God was entirely his fault, he finally realized he was a complete failure as both a Christian family man and a Baptist minister, and so at long last, his heart was completely broken and he no longer had any will to fight back at the central characters. Despite being HIV positive, Vicky Sims wanted a boyfriend, and so Jessica found her one. Paul Jenkins, who lived in another town, was the nephew of Carla Jenkins, and, most importantly, was also HIV positive. The two quickly formed a powerful love match. Months later, Debbie and Carrie went on a trip to Los Angeles, and took with them many others, including Lucy, Vicky, Sandy, James, Whitney, Penny Bentley, her Uncle Wayne, and Eric and Bella Sterling. They all were given rooms in Laura Park's mansion. Then Victoria, Lucy's sister, came to the mansion to interview Laura Park, and Laura was furious to learn from Lucy that Victoria was a homophobe, so she refused the interview request. This and other such incidents would later cause Victoria to be fired from her TV talk show. Debbie and Carrie were going to Los Angeles not merely for a vacation, but to help Carrie's grandmother Elizabeth make a movie based on her early rock star days. This meant that Carrie had to revert briefly to her original appearance to play her own grandmother in her teens. While this was happening, Penny drops a bombshell on the rest of the group by telling them she is leaving the Catholic church she was raised in. This declaration also caused Eric and Bella, who were also raised Catholic, to follow suit, and so Vicky invites them all to try attending the town's Unitarian Universalist church instead. This experience convinces Vicky Sims that she should become a Unitarian Universalist minister. Meanwhile, Sandy and Whitney agree that James and Penny might become a good match for each other, because of Penny's conversion. James and Penny go on their first date after returning to their town, and James is amazed at how serious Penny seems to be, so he accepts her as his love partner. They lose their virginity together. Paul Jenkins later informs Vicky that his grandmother has died, and so he has moved in with his aunt to attend the same high school Vicky is at, much to her delight. One day, Sandy is visited by her old enemy, Diana Kelly, who was responsible for the breakup of Sandy's marriage to Rich Smith. Diana now tells Sandy she is going to marry Simon Green, one of Sandy's brothers, and invites Sandy to the wedding, despite Sandy being an outcast from the rest of the Green family. Sandy is so troubled by this news that she goes to the club in Tulsa owned by Steve Miller and does a ton of binge drinking to drown out her sorrows. She passes out at the club, and when she comes to, she finds herself at the home of Steve himself. Sandy tells him of her troubles with Diana Kelly, and Steve unexpectedly suggests they counter Diana by getting married themselves and offers to make Debbie and James heirs to his estate. Sandy accepts this offer for her children's sake. And so a month later they tie the knot, and then Sandy and Steve spend their honeymoon in Hawaii, completely ditching Diana Kelly's wedding to Simon Green, much to her annoyance. Sandy then moves to Tulsa to live with Steve. Kelly Grimm, who was police chief of the town, now reveals she was demoted and replaced by the mayor for dating one of her own officers. Meanwhile, Debbie reveals to her mother that she is pregnant. James and Penny are now co-workers at the Tuscany Tavern, with Penny as chief cook and James as a waiter. The two attend a Catholic service together as part of their developing relationship, since James has never been to a Catholic church before. Because of Kelly Grimm's demotion, her relationship with Officer Randall breaks up, and they both quit the police force, Kelly moving to Dallas and becoming a pilot working out of DFW Airport. Lucy finds herself being repeatedly harassed by the town's police over broken taillights on her car, until Officer Theodore Root reveals to her that it is the cops themselves that were damaging the car, and that the conspiracy for this goes all the way up to the mayor's office. When Sandy hears about this, she decides to leave Tulsa and Steve to return to the town to defend Lucy and the others from the police and the mayor, and Steve supports her decision. Sandy then announces that she will actually run for mayor of the town to unseat its incumbent, Ted Anderson. Sandy explains that Ted Anderson's drastic tax cuts have made him totally neglect its infrastructure, including the roads that now have vast numbers of potholes and a water treatment system that no longer works, and these are causing people in the town to suffer. Sandy promises to fix these issues. Later, James and Penny are shocked to learn that Ted Wilson has been released from juvenile hall and has even been hired to join the town's police force. He tries to take advantage of his new position to threaten James and Penny, but is stopped by Carrie, who beats the crap out of Ted Wilson so that James and Penny can escape. Carrie is then arrested and jailed. The next day, Whitney Owen, who is Sandy's campaign manager, receives news that her grandfather has died by suicide, and her parents blame her for it. She is grief-stricken over this. James now informs his mother that he has been offered a scholarship to Harvard, but his accepting it will require him to leave Penny behind. The district attorney of the town attempts to get Carrie to accept a plea agreement regarding her beating Ted Wilson, but Carrie refuses it, instead relying on Sandy to defend her in court. Sandy herself has made public all the circumstances behind why Carrie attacked Ted Wilson, and so the DA drops the charges against Carrie and has her released rather than him become a public laughingstock at Carrie's trial. With financial assistance provided by Steve, Lucy has installed a security system at the Tuscany Tavern, including a silent alarm and cameras. While Ted Anderson, the mayor, is campaigning against Sandy Smith by lying about her politics and plans. His son George, who Ted made police chief, decides to break into the Tuscany Tavern after it closes, and he and another cop set fire to the restaurant's kitchen, but because of the security system, the cops are caught red-handed and subjected to a beating by the Sims family, and then the fire department arrives to put out the fire. Then George Anderson and his accomplice are jailed and stripped of their positions, and it isn't long before the scandal causes Mayor Ted Anderson to be voted out of office as well. And so ends the 4th season of the Debbie and Carrie Show.